They were larger than life, commanding the stage with power, energy, and music that defined generations. But in the blink of an eye, cheers turned to gasps. These weren't scripted collapses or dramatic finales. These were real stars, fighting exhaustion, pain, and fate under the brightest spotlights. Have you ever wondered what happens when icons stumble in front of thousands? Stick around, because some of these collapses will leave you speechless. Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll didn't just sing, he reigned. By the mid-1970s, though, the crown weighed heavy. Years of relentless touring, grueling schedules, and declining health caught up with him. In June 1977, during what would become his final tour, Elvis collapsed on stage in Baltimore. Fans at first thought it was part of his erratic stage persona, but backstage reports told a darker story. He struggled to catch his breath, visibly weakened, and staff rushed to revive him. Elvis somehow continued the performance, his voice carrying through sheer willpower. But the image of the once vibrant superstar slumping before a shocked audience was heartbreaking. Less than 2 months later, he was gone forever. That collapse became a haunting prelude to his untimely end. For fans, it was a devastating reminder that even kings are not invincible. Michael Jackson. No one owned the stage like Michael Jackson. Moonwalks, spins, and a voice that electrified stadiums, his concerts were spectacles of perfection. But behind the glitter lay exhaustion. During his 1997 History World Tour in Munich, Jackson performed a high-flying stunt on a massive platform. Midway through Earth Song, the stage mechanism malfunctioned, and he was violently jolted before crashing onto the stage. He collapsed instantly. For several terrifying seconds, the king of pop lay motionless as tens of thousands screamed. Then, against all odds, he stood, dusted himself off, and finished the entire show before collapsing backstage. Doctors later confirmed he had suffered serious injuries, including back problems that plagued him for years. Fans marveled at his resilience, but that moment revealed the brutal price of perfection. Jackson's collapse wasn't just shocking, it showed the frailty beneath the legend. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston had the kind of voice that could silence a room, but during her later years, that voice was often overshadowed by visible signs of struggle. In 1996, while performing in Brunei at a lavish royal wedding concert, Whitney suddenly staggered, her body giving way under the heat and exhaustion. She collapsed briefly before being carried off stage by her team. Though she returned to finish the performance, fans whispered about her declining health. The collapse was more than a stumble. It was a symbol of the immense pressure she carried. Audiences expected flawless vocals night after night, but Whitney was fighting internal battles unseen by the spotlight. That Brunei collapse stands as one of the first public warning signs that something was terribly wrong. For many, it was the moment the world realized that even voices sent from heaven could falter. Jim Morrison. The Doors frontman wasn't just a singer, he was chaos wrapped in leather pants. But Jim Morrison's unpredictable stage antics often blurred the line between performance and collapse. One of the most infamous moments came in Amsterdam in 1968, when he passed out on stage after only a few songs. Fans assumed it was another drunken stunt, but Morrison was genuinely incapacitated. Ray Manzarek, the band's keyboardist, had to take over lead vocals to finish the set. For audiences, it was a confusing mix of drama and tragedy. Morrison collapsing wasn't unusual. He had done it in Boston, Miami, and Los Angeles. But Amsterdam was different. He was carried off, unconscious, while the band scrambled to keep the illusion alive. The collapse wasn't just a bad night. It foreshadowed Morrison's spiral toward an early grave. In many ways, every onstage fall became part of his dark mythology, where danger and genius collided under the spotlight. Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse lived like her voice, raw, unfiltered, unforgettable. But her 2011 Belgrade concert became infamous for the wrong reasons. Fans expecting brilliance instead watched in horror as Amy stumbled through her set, slurring lyrics before collapsing mid-song. The band tried to cover for her, but the collapse was undeniable. She was helped off stage as thousands booed and cheered in confusion. That moment wasn't just a collapse, it was a public unraveling. The show was cut short, and the footage spread worldwide, painting a painful picture of a star in decline. Less than a month later, Amy was gone forever. Her Belgrade collapse is remembered not just as a shocking on-stage fall, but as a tragic farewell. The world didn't just lose a voice, it lost a force of nature extinguished far too soon. Justin Bieber. By 2013, Justin Bieber was living the dream and the nightmare all at once. The pop sensation was in London's O2 Arena performing to a sold-out crowd when something went horribly wrong. Halfway through his set, Justin began gasping for breath. He clutched his chest, staggered to the side of the stage, and collapsed right there in front of thousands of screaming fans. At first, the audience thought it might be an overdramatic stunt. After all, pop stars love theatrics. But when crew members rushed out, panic set in. Justin had been suffering from severe shortness of breath and exhaustion. He was rushed backstage, hooked up to oxygen, and barely recovered in time. Astonishingly, he returned minutes later, finishing the show before heading to the hospital. It was a collapse that showed the brutal toll of non-stop touring, endless paparazzi pressure, and the impossible demand to always perform at 100%. For fans, it was terrifying to see their idol crumble. For Justin, it was a reminder that even global superstars have breaking points. That night, the screams of adoration turned into gasps of fear, and it became one of the most shocking collapses in pop history. Ozzy Osbourne. They didn't call him the Prince of Darkness for nothing. Ozzy Osbourne lived on chaos, feeding his shows with raw power and wild antics. But even heavy metal gods can fall. During his 2001 Ozzfest tour, Ozzy stunned fans when he suddenly collapsed mid-performance. One moment he was bellowing into the mic, the next he was on the ground, motionless. Fans weren't sure what to believe. Was it part of the act? Was he joking? But roadies and medics rushed to his side, proving this was no gimmick. The cause? Sheer exhaustion. After decades of high-energy tours, Ozzy's body simply gave out. Yet in typical Ozzy fashion, he brushed it off, later joking that it would take a lot more than fainting to stop him. The collapse, however, highlighted something darker. Ozzy's relentless drive to perform came at a heavy cost to his health. His audiences loved his raw, untamed energy, but the cracks were starting to show. That Ozzfest collapse stands as one of the rawest moments in his career, when the line between myth and man broke down before thousands of stunned fans. Demi Lovato. For Demi Lovato, music has always been tied to resilience. But even resilience has limits. In 2010, while touring and juggling multiple projects, Demi collapsed on stage due to severe dehydration and exhaustion. The moment was terrifying for fans, who watched as their idol suddenly buckled under the harsh stage lights. Medics rushed in, and the show came to an abrupt halt. For someone who had been seen as a strong role model for young fans, the collapse revealed the brutal cost of constant pressure. Being on the road meant little sleep, constant travel, and the stress of perfection every single night. What's remarkable is how Demi bounced back. Instead of hiding the incident, she later used it as a lesson to speak openly about the importance of health, rest, and boundaries. Her collapse wasn't just a fall, it was a turning point. Fans didn't just gasp in shock, they came to understand the human cost of stardom. It showed that behind the glamour, even the strongest stars can falter under the weight of expectation. Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is famous for her jaw-dropping performances, from meat dresses to high-wire theatrics. But in 2012, while performing in New Zealand during her Born This Way Ball tour, the unstoppable Gaga literally hit the ground. Mid-dance routine, she collapsed on stage, clutching her head after being accidentally struck by a pole wielded by a backup dancer. The crowd gasped as Gaga fell to her knees, clearly shaken. Medics rushed to her side, and fans braced for the worst. But in true Gaga fashion, she stunned everyone by getting back up and finishing the entire show, even though she later revealed she had suffered a concussion. That collapse became a defining moment in Gaga's career. It wasn't just about pushing through pain, it was about her unshakable commitment to her fans. Of course, many criticized the decision, saying no concert is worth risking long-term health, but Gaga's resilience turned the terrifying fall into a legendary story. It was proof that her motto wasn't just born this way, it was also built to keep going, no matter what. Selena Quintanilla. Selena Quintanilla, the queen of Tejano music, was adored for her energy, charisma, and groundbreaking performances. In early 1995, during one of her shows in Mexico, Selena collapsed on stage, stunning fans who were used to seeing her as a bundle of unstoppable fire. Exhaustion and the brutal pace of her schedule were to blame. Her team rushed to her side, helping her backstage while the crowd sat in stunned silence. Selena recovered quickly, but that collapse was an eerie foreshadowing of the tragedy to come just weeks later. For her fans, seeing Selena falter was shocking because she had always seemed invincible, bright, full of life, and larger than the stage itself. That collapse revealed a different truth. Even the brightest stars can flicker. Today, it's remembered as a haunting moment in her story, not because she didn't get back up, but because fate had already written her final chapter. For millions, that stumble made her eventual loss even more devastating. Keith Moon. Keith Moon, drummer for The Who, was the very definition of rock and roll chaos. Known for destroying drum kits and throwing wild tantrums, he was as unpredictable offstage as he was on. But on December 9, 1974, during a performance in San Francisco, Moon shocked fans in a different way. Mid-show, he suddenly slumped over his drums and collapsed in full view of thousands. The audience thought it was a gag at first. After all, Moon was notorious for theatrics, but when roadies rushed to his side, the truth sank in. He was out cold. He had reportedly suffered a collapse from sheer exhaustion mixed with years of reckless living. Incredibly, Pete Townshend pulled a fan from the crowd to finish drumming for the band that night. The moment was surreal. Fans didn't just witness a collapse, they saw their heroes scrambling to keep the show alive. For Moon, it became one of many incidents that showed how unsustainable his lifestyle had become. He remained a rock legend, but that fall on stage proved even the wildest showman can crash when the lights burn too hot. Madonna. Madonna has always built her career on being unstoppable, the queen who reinvents herself at every turn. But in 2020, while on her Madame X tour in Lisbon, Portugal, even she couldn't fight the body's limits. In the middle of a performance, Madonna collapsed, wincing in visible pain before being escorted off stage. Fans gasped as the music icon, so often fierce and indestructible, suddenly looked fragile. The cause was later revealed to be chronic knee and hip injuries worsened by the punishing tour schedule. True to her relentless nature, she fought to continue, performing through pain until doctors forced her to cancel several shows. For audiences, the collapse was more than a stumble. It was a jarring reminder that even the most powerful stars age, even if their music doesn't. Seeing Madonna falter was like watching a superhero suddenly admit to being human. But if anything, it deepened fans' respect. She didn't just collapse, she showed grit by returning to the stage again and again. Charlie Puth. Charlie Puth may have a clean-cut image, but life on tour tested his limits. In 2016, while performing in New Jersey, he collapsed on stage from dehydration and exhaustion. The young pop star had been battling illness but pushed forward, determined not to disappoint his fans. His voice faltered, his knees buckled, and then he went down. The show was immediately canceled, leaving fans worried and shaken. Charlie later admitted that he hadn't been taking care of his health properly during the relentless schedule of travel and performances. His collapse wasn't just a shocking scene, it was a wake-up call about how even rising stars face burnout. What made the moment even more striking was how quickly it spread online. Clips of him falling circulated everywhere, sparking conversations about the pressure young artists face in an unforgiving industry. Charlie recovered, but that night became part of his story, a reminder that fame can take as much as it gives, sometimes in front of thousands of horrified fans. Pink. If anyone seems invincible on stage, it's Pink. Her concerts are feats of athleticism, with high-flying stunts, acrobatics, and daredevil energy. But in 2010, during a show in Nuremberg, Germany, the spectacle took a dangerous turn. A harness malfunction flung Pink off balance, and she crashed into a barricade before collapsing in pain. The crowd gasped as the music stopped, and crew members rushed to her. For a tense few minutes, no one knew if she was seriously injured. Pink, ever the warrior, was later taken to the hospital where she was treated for bruises and minor injuries. Amazingly, she laughed about it afterward, even apologizing to fans on Twitter. That collapse wasn't caused by exhaustion or illness, but by the risks of turning concerts into Cirque du Soleil-style events. Pink's fall proved that no matter how strong, daring, or prepared a performer is, danger lurks in every corner of live entertainment. Yet her quick return to the stage cemented her reputation as one of the toughest performers in the business. Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson built his career on shock value, but in 2017, he delivered a shock no one expected. While performing in New York City, he climbed a large stage prop shaped like giant guns. Suddenly, the structure collapsed, crashing onto him and pinning him underneath. The audience, at first unsure if it was part of the act, quickly realized the horror it wasn't. Crew members frantically rushed in as the music stopped and the crowd gasped in disbelief. Manson was pulled out and rushed to the hospital with multiple injuries, forcing him to cancel several shows. What made this collapse unforgettable was its sheer spectacle. Here was a performer known for pushing boundaries, suddenly brought down not by performance exhaustion, but by the very stage he commanded. For fans, it was a chilling moment when art and accident collided in the worst way. Manson returned to touring later, but that collapse became one of the most terrifying onstage moments of his career. Post Malone. Post Malone has a reputation for giving his all, but in 2022, he gave more than his body could handle. During a concert in St. Louis, he fell into an uncovered hole on the stage, hard. The impact left him writhing in pain before collapsing completely as the crowd went silent. For a terrifying moment, fans thought the show was over for good. Medics rushed in, and he was helped off stage clutching his ribs. Astonishingly, Post Malone returned minutes later, apologizing to fans and finishing the set despite clear agony. Later, doctors confirmed he had cracked several ribs. Clips of his collapse spread instantly across social media, with fans praising his toughness while also questioning why artists push through serious injuries just to keep a show alive. That collapse wasn't just a freak accident. It was a reminder that even modern stages, with all their dazzling technology, carry risks. Post Malone didn't just stumble, he showed grit, finishing a show that could have ended in chaos. Loaf. Loaf was a performer who didn't just sing songs, he lived them, pouring sweat, passion, and raw emotion into every performance. But in 2016, during a show in Edmonton, Canada, his epic energy came crashing down. While performing his classic "I'd Do Anything for Love," he suddenly dropped the mic, staggered, and collapsed in front of a stunned crowd. The audience at first thought it might be another one of his dramatic flourishes, but the silence that followed told the truth. Crew members rushed to his side, and he was carried off stage as fans prayed for the best. Reports later confirmed he had suffered from severe dehydration and exhaustion, worsened by health struggles that plagued his later years. For fans, the moment was heartbreaking. Meat Loaf was a giant of rock opera, a man who turned concerts into theater. Seeing him collapse wasn't just a fall. It was watching a titan's body betray the heart of a performer who never wanted to stop. That collapse became one of the most haunting chapters in his storied career. Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana's guitar could make time stop, but in 2022, time caught up to him. While performing in Michigan, the legendary guitarist collapsed mid-performance, slumping over his instrument before lying flat on the stage. Shock rippled through the audience as medics rushed in, quickly shielding him from view while chaos spread through the crowd. The cause was later revealed to be heat exhaustion and dehydration, an all-too-common danger for touring musicians, especially under sweltering lights. Santana was rushed to the hospital, stabilized, and thankfully recovered. Still, fans who witnessed the collapse said the image of their guitar hero being carried away was something they would never forget. That night reminded the world of a harsh truth. Even legends who seem untouchable are still human. Santana's collapse wasn't just frightening, it was a wake-up call about the unforgiving grind of life on tour. He returned to the stage soon after, proving that his spirit, much like his music, was impossible to silence. So there you have it, 18 stars who collapsed under the spotlight, proving that even icons can falter when the pressure, the heat, or fate itself takes over. Which of these moments shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that peel back the curtain on fame. After all, the stage may glitter, but behind it, anything can happen.